Hi. Hopefully everyone can see me now. Hello. Hi. Thanks for waiting again. I just cannot get started on time for some reason, but I appreciate you guys waiting for me. Hi everyone. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. I think my light. I don't know. I just kind of rushed in here last second to get the stream started, but anyhow, well, I see a lot of regulars here. I appreciate that. Anyway, as usual, I'm here on Thursdays now at 3:45 in addition to my Sunday mornings, to help anyone with any questions they have, about Olympus cameras or lenses or, even Olympus workspace. If you're want to know how to do something or want to upgrade to a camera, I'm pretty familiar with most of the line that I think I can help with just about everything across the board. But hi, Dr. Lumix, how are you? Yeah, we've been chit-chatting back and forth on Instagram a bit. Escapes me now what we were talking about, but you probably had a nice picture or something I liked and we were commenting. I'm sorry, my memory is so bad and there's so many of you for me to try to keep up with that when I see you come in the chat room, your name and whatever we were talking about just doesn't come together sometimes. Oh, so Marcus, you almost bought a Z7. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. You what camera are you shooting with now, Marcus? If you haven't tried Olympus yet. Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I looked at the Z7 back in Christmas, I think, and because I have a Nikon D750 that is just collecting dust, and I said, well, I got all these lenses for Nikon. Maybe if I upgrade to the mirrorless system, I'll I might start using them again, the lenses. But I decided against it because at the time it was about $3,300 to get, you're saying it's $2,800, but then because Marcus is saying he could have got the Z7 with the 24-70 for and the adapter for $2,800. And you have to kind of add in the cost of new memory cards and new memory card reader. There's $200-300 right there on top of it, and that's just for one memory card. You're going to need several. So when I kind of weighed all that in, and then when I looked at the image quality comparison with my Micro Four Thirds, on my Olympus, I just said, it's not worth, $3,300, $3,500 difference for me to go that route. So that's what held me back, was the cost. Really, it's just a substantial investment. Now the good thing is I wouldn't probably have to invest in too many new lenses because I have f-mount lenses to use. But the camera body, and then in a year or 2 years that camera is going to be a lot less, especially with all the competition in the full frame market. People are they're just really giving their cameras away. But yeah, Marcus, so you're thinking about the M5 III or the M1 II, and in about 3 weeks I think the M1 Mark III is going to be announced, so that might put a little more pressure on the Mark II pricing. Thanks, Anna. I'm glad I could help you. So, and the EM5 Mark III, that's that's a great camera too if you really want to get as small and compact as possible. What I did, or what I use actually most now, is this EM5 Mark III with the Panasonic 12-32 lens, because it's just it's hard to tell on camera, but this thing is tiny with this lens on it, and I don't know. I just love this compactness, and then it has everything for me to do vlogging and do great pictures at the same time. Hey Larry, how are you? Long time. Or no, you're probably here all the time. I don't know. But yeah, Marcus, I mean, it's a tough call to buy a new camera. But like I said, I don't know what you're shooting with now, and then I can give you sort of some comparisons or thoughts what I think you may or may not like about another system. Corona's asking me, do I like the Panasonic 12 to 32 over the Olympus 14 to 42? I do like it more in the sense that it's wider at 2 millimeters, and that's about 90% of the reason. Because between the two lenses, they're about the same size and roughly the same speed in terms of light. But that extra 2 millimeter makes a difference for me because I vlog. Now, if I didn't vlog, I would just stick with the Olympus 14 to 42 Pancake, and because that's a fine lens as well. And the other thing the Pancake lens gives you from Olympus is you can manually focus that lens. I don't know of any way to manually focus with that 12 to 32. Maybe there is a way on a Panasonic, but I haven't found it. I think it's an autofocus only lens. But it's a great lens. It's very crisp. I mean, it just intuitively, I feel like it's a little bit more contrasty than the Olympus version, but I haven't actually compared them side by side. And, you know, I use my 14 to 42 kit lens, not the Pancake version, but the regular one for photography, just because I prefer the manual zoom over the power zoom for photography. And that's the other thing that this lens is. It's smaller, lighter, has a wider focal length, and it's a manual zoom. So this has, it kind of checks all the boxes I'm looking for. And I'm not worried about manual focus personally because the autofocus is so good now. And we have focus stacking or focus bracketing built in as well, so you don't have to worry about trying to manually focus. Because in other cameras, if you want to do focus bracketing, you have to manually focus each shot. But with the Olympus cameras, you don't have to do that. So even less reason to really need manual focus. The only time that this may be a problem is for astrophotography, because you do have to manually focus a lot when you're doing astrophotography. Oh, thank you so much, Marcus. I appreciate that. Gosh, that's great. I appreciate that a lot. Let's see, Ultramuck. It says, thanks, Rob. Are you upgrading your EM1 Mark II to the 3? I saw on the rumor site that it will have a native ISO of 100, and that if that's true, I'm going to upgrade my EM1 to a Mark II. Or you're going to upgrade your EM1 Mark II. I'm a little bit, I'm a little anxious about the EM1 Mark II, or Mark III, I'm sorry, coming out. I mean, the main thing is that it's going to have a new processor, which is, it's got to have a new processor. And even though, they're saying that it's probably going to have the same sensor as, that's been around for 4 years now. And that's perfectly fine because the sensor alone does not dictate the final image quality. It's also the processing involved. So the new processor could possibly improve the noise performance even more through some algorithms or something that they might be able to firmware update our other cameras with. But there's also the entire circuit boards and all of the electronics inside the camera that can also lower the noise floor on the sensor because of the electromagnetic radiation coming from all of the different circuits. If they can do better shielding or use higher quality components, you're going to get less noise in the sensor, and that will also translate possibly to less noise even in the audio, because they talk about noise floors in audio. Well, the same thing applies to the sensor. There's a noise floor that will allow the camera to do much better in low light. The main thing I'm hoping for is that they improve the granularity of the autofocus system, because right now it's only 120 points or whatever. And to me, I'm not a camera engineer, but I don't see how 120 points can have the precision to do the kind of eye autofocus that a lot of other systems have, because they all have like 500 points, 1,000 points of autofocus on them. And that gives those cameras that kind of precision to lock in on the eye. Whereas, the camera, the way the autofocus system is now, if the person's standing, maybe 3 meters back, uh, almost their whole face is within one focus point, never mind just their eye, right? That, and I think the viewfinder, if they can improve on that and just go to an OLED display to improve the user experience, because most people, the perception of the viewfinder is, or that user experience with the viewfinder is very important. And it's important to me as well. I mean, I really like to look through a very clean, contrasty, sharp viewfinder. And, when I look through the EM1 Mark II's viewfinder, I mean, I can get by. It's perfectly fine. And, it doesn't affect your image quality, obviously, having, a little softer viewfinder, but it's a big deal to me, and it's the main reason. Many years ago, I upgraded from APS-C Nikons to the full frame Nikon, because the full frame Nikons, I didn't worry about image quality, but the full frame Nikons had bigger viewfinders, and that was important to me. So that kind of follows along to my experience with Olympus, and thankfully, the EM5 Mark III had a really nice viewfinder in it, and it's only 10% bigger, say, than the EM10 Mark II, but in practice and with the very good eye relief, it's a very it's a much superior viewfinder to the EM10 Mark II, more than 10% in terms of actual user experience. It's like a 50% improvement in that respect, in my opinion. Let's see. Sam is saying he bumped into a guy that was carrying a rucksack and tripod and Z7 and looked weighed down. I had my Pen F and wrist strap and another F1.8 Prime in each pocket and two schnauzers. Yeah, I know that. I see that all the time when I go out as well. I got my little tiny EM5 Mark III, or yeah, EM5 Mark III. I mean, it just sits in my hand like this, and I'm good. I go out just like this a lot of times. This is all I need, is this and this little pancake kit lens. And I can get, take any picture I want, basically. There's certainly room for adding on, the 300 millimeter f4 or larger lenses that are good for the micro four thirds. But again, your overall system is like half the size of just about anything else out there. Yeah, the Nikons are heavy. I my D750, I was doing some comparisons of the ISO invariance between my EM5 Mark III and the D750, and while I was fiddling with the camera and I was holding it and doing stuff, and I'm like, my fingers are getting tired because I just wasn't used to holding so much weight at once. It's yeah, I don't miss it at all. I kind of feel bad that I don't shoot with it anymore, because it's a fine camera, takes wonderful pictures, and it does do a slightly better job in low light for me. But I, just after playing around with it for about a half hour yesterday, I was just like, man, I just can't deal with this anymore. Oh, what is the expected life of the shutter? I really don't know. I mean, I know that on the M1 Mark II, Jimmy Chang over there at Red 35 said, I think he said he got 300,000 or 400,000 clicks out of it. But honestly, I don't know the actual life of the shutter. I mean, I don't think I've ever come close to reaching the shelf life of a shutter. Uh, Mainly because I have so many cameras to spread out that the number of clicks I take. But what's on eBay for $900? An EM1 Mark II? I mean, that's a good deal. That's a good deal. Plato's asking, oh, I'm sorry. Mark is asking, would I be comfortable buying a used EM1 Mark III? I assume you mean Mark II with 45,000 shutter actuations. Yeah, I would be fine with that if the price is right. I don't think $900 is low enough though. I mean, if it had 10,000 or less on it, maybe I'd pay like 900, because for a little more, and the reason I say this, because brand new or near new, you can get them for about $1,200-$1,300. And yeah, that's substantially more, but at the same time, you get, the warranty with it. And that's not a small thing. I mean, I've never had any problems with my M1 Mark II, but I think there is like a $200 value in the warranty, in my opinion. So if I'm going to buy a used camera, it's going to be under $1,000, and it better be like new at that price point. And as you go up in the shutter count like that, it needs to drop significantly, in my opinion. And not because I think that the shutter life is on its way out or worn, but that's a lot of clicks, and you don't know how that camera was handled during that lifetime. So it's more about how did the user take care of the camera over 45,000 clicks, because that's a lot of clicks. Like if you bought a camera from me with 45,000 clicks, I would discount it heavily, because I know I bang my cameras around a lot. And that's why I say $900 is, I don't think, a fair price with a camera with that many actuations. Now, my friend Walter, if he had 45,000 shutter clicks on his camera, I would have no problem buying that from him, because I know it's been well maintained. And in fact, I bought his Jeep Grand Cherokee. Maybe you've seen him in some of my videos, that truck I bought, the Jeep. That thing had 176,000 miles on it. And I didn't mind buying it at all, because he took that car into the dealer for everything. I mean, if a light bulb went out, he would take it into the dealer to change light bulbs, wiper blades, and then he had major service done to it, etc. So even though it had a lot of miles on it, I knew that thing was babied and extremely well taken care of. But if I saw that same truck from another person with that many miles on it, I wouldn't give him 2 cents for it, So, so when you're buying used equipment, that's just try and buy them as like new as possible, so that they had as least handling and abuse as possible. And then when you get it, have the confidence that it's going to last you a long time if you take care of it. Oh, hi, Digital Grandpa. Sell the D750 and get the 300 millimeter lens. I think I might get like $300 or $400 for my D750 on trade, because I would trade it in at the local store. And for that little bit of money, I'd rather just keep it, because once in a while I think about the camera and what a great camera it is, but even though I don't use it. How long is the life of Olympus batteries? I just had 2 lithium 90B batteries for the Olympus Tough Die. Am I expected too much for them to last longer? If they're Olympus original batteries, you should get a couple of years out of them. I mean, I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of cycles on my TG5 battery, but it's a little over a year old now, and I'm not having any issues. But generally speaking, batteries, just rule of thumb, you can get about 500 cycles out of them, charge and discharge. And a couple of tips are just don't leave them on the charger overnight or longer than they need to be. It's not because they overcharge, but that constant trickle charge that goes into it will shorten the life of the battery over time. So it's best to, when you charge batteries, as soon as they're done, take them off of the charger and use them. So I don't know if that has anything to do with your experience with those batteries, if you're leaving them on the charger overnight or over weeks and days. But it's it's just good practice to take them off as soon as they're done charging. I don't know if that helps you or not. Yeah, Marcus, you should buy new if you can, because right now between 900 and 1200, there's not that much difference, and you get a warranty. Sefron's saying they have the M1 Mark IIs for 1100. And yeah, depending on the shutter count, that's not bad, because you get, at least usually when I buy from my local store, District Camera, they give me 30 days. Yeah, it depends on what it is. Some are 30 days, but they give me I think they give me 2 weeks to return the camera for full credit, store credit, or there's some kind of restocking fee if I just want my money back. But at least you have some options, right, locally that you can deal with, and you can handle the camera before you buy it. So there's a lot of value in buying locally all of your gear. Oh, hey John, how are you? Do the M5 Mark II and the 3 have Pro Capture mode? The M5 Mark III does. I don't think the M1 Mark II or EM5 Mark II has Pro Capture. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I mean, it's a fine camera, but yeah, it doesn't have Pro Capture. But I don't own that camera to tell you definitively. I can only base that on what I remember. Rob, still considering going into film medium format? Yes, I was searching for some 5x4 cameras the other day. I think I'm going to go that route. I was really leaning towards going to 120 film, getting a Hasselblad, or maybe the Bronica. And I still might get one of those in addition to a 5x4. But I think my first camera will probably be, my first large format film camera will be probably a 5x4. It's just, they're a lot harder to find, and I want to get kind of a cool one, right? Maybe one in a wooden box with a nice wood frame. I saw one for about $800 or $900, and with the lens, it would have been about $1,000 or $1,100. It's beautiful, beautiful. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a beautiful wooden 4x5 or 5x4 camera. And it's like $10 a sheet, with processing and developing and the cost of the film itself. But I think it'll be worth it, because the 120 film side, I would probably still only be taking a few pictures at a time anyway. Under the E menu, noise reduction and noise filter, is those active when you shoot RAW? I turn the noise reduction, I believe, is the JPEG. Let me look. There is a difference. I just can't remember which is which, but I'll tell you exactly. Okay, noise filter is for your JPEGs, and I always have that off. It's very rare that I might turn it to low. In the old days, I would turn it to low sometimes, but right now I just turn it completely off because the camera's normal JPEG processing, even with it off, does some noise filtering, particularly the color noise. And if you start cranking the noise filter up, your JPEGs are going to get a little bit softer or smudgier looking. It's going to start smudging the details out. So I always shoot with that off. And then if I have to do more processing, I'll do it in workspace. The noise reduction noise reduction filter is a two-step process for long exposure. So if you're taking pictures less than 1 second long, so you're taking at your normal 1/60th, 1/100th, etc., that particular noise reduction doesn't come into play. But when you get into 1 or 2 second, 3 second, and longer exposures, the noise reduction filter, what it does is you take a picture, say 5 seconds, a 5-second exposure. It'll finish that 5-second exposure, then keep the shutter closed and take another picture for 5 seconds, but with the shutter completely closed. And what it's trying to do is read the internal noise of the sensor that shows up and subtract that noise from the original picture you took. They call it like a dark frame or black frame in astrophotography. They do that a lot. And I always have that on. And the only time it really becomes a problem is for people that are doing 15-minute exposures, for example. Then they have to wait 15 minutes for the noise reduction filter, with the black frame to finish. So that's 30 minutes you're standing around waiting for the camera to be ready again. And the challenge with that is usually you're using long exposures when the light is dropping, especially when the light is dropping, and you won't get a second chance because 30 minutes later it might be pitch black and you're not going to be able to get the same picture again. So a lot of people, they don't like to use the second noise reduction filter, the noise reduction feature, because it ties up their camera for twice as long as their exposure. So if they're doing 10-minute exposures, now it's 20 minutes before they can take another picture. So, what I tell people, if you have the luxury, bring 2 or 3 cameras with you so that while one is processing, you can start another one, right? If you're trying to capture a certain time of day. Now, if it's pitch black at night and it doesn't matter, but that's really the only issue people would have with the noise reduction filter versus turning it on and off. Can time delay shutter, Thomas is asking, can time delay shutter be done with the HDR on the M10 Mark II? The action seems so violent and blurs my shots. I don't know any way to do it, HDR, without pushing the shutter button. I think you may be able to use a remote shutter, not the app, but actually there's a USB looking thing that you plug into the side of the camera, and then you have a button, and that's probably the only way to do it. So you go onto a tripod, you plug in this remote shutter, and you can actuate it that way. But I don't think there's any other way to do that, either through delay or through the app. I haven't tried that personally myself. I should, because I do have a remote shutter. I just never used it. Let me think. If I can think where it is real quick, I can try it for you. I don't know where it is. It might come to me and I'll try that for you. Or maybe I'll do a video on using a remote shutter. Okay, Rob, do you have some other means to accept donations? I don't use PayPal, Make a Gift, or Amazon account. Oh, hey, Tom. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. The only way to do it is maybe right here in chat. There's a little $sign icon at the bottom that you can try. And if that's not an option for you either, then don't worry about it. It's okay, I appreciate it. Just a thought that counts, Let's see. Oh, Lars is asking, what happened to my cheap battery purchases? Okay, so I finally ended up with 3 batteries that were supposedly Olympus originals, and I bought one Fujifilm original. And of the three, two of them were completely duds. They were not genuine batteries. The third one, the one that is good, time will tell. I'm very suspect of it now, but it did test out okay in terms of the 2 times that I tested it for milliamps. It did draw 1100 milliamps out of the battery properly, but the other 2, no. One of them is completely dead now. It's this one. Well, I wouldn't say it's completely dead. It charges, but then it doesn't hold the current. Meaning the amperage is very low. I don't know how to explain it because I'm not an electrician. But the camera thinks the battery is dead. So even though it has the proper voltage, it's charged up to 8.4 volts, but it's not able to provide enough current for the camera to operate. And this one looks almost exactly like an original. There's very subtle differences that I might attribute to just different manufacturing, times. And then my Fujifilm battery, that one is visibly different looking than the Fujifilm original. Now, the Fujifilm original has painted lettering and specs and everything on it. And the Fujifilm generic fake original that I bought is painted exactly the same way, but you can tell the paint isn't of the same quality, meaning the resolution of the paint is not as good. So I was very suspect just on a visual inspection. And then when I tested it, I only got 700 milliamps out of it. And that battery is rated, I think, the same, around 11 or 1200 milliamps. So, yeah, that turned out to be a bust. Oh, Sam, you had a Bronica SQA and an ETRS. Yeah, I like the SQA. There's a model of it, a later version. I forget what it's called, but it's in the SQ line. And the only reason I prefer the later models is because they're just newer, not because they have any particular features I'm looking for. Because I think they added some auto exposure, or I forget what it was. They added some features and rearranged where the ISO dial is. That wasn't important. What was more important to me is that the SQAs were manufactured from like the early 1980s, but this particular model was manufactured, all the way up to 1990 or 1996. So if I buy one of the later models, it's going to be a little newer, which would sort of imply that any seals or rubber bushings, whatever mechanical parts are going to have less wear and there's going to be less decay on any of the plastic by as many as 10 years. So I'm trying to find a newer Bronica because they're very cheap and they're excellent cameras from everything I've seen online about it. And I think I can get a whole Bronica setup with 2 film backs, 2 or 3 lenses for like about $800. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then, the film itself is what it is, but okay. What is color science? I read it everywhere, but nobody really explains it. I think color science is kind of a made-up term. I don't know what they call it internally in their individual. I'm sorry, the lighting here is not great. I just noticed. Let me see if I can. But basically, it's the sensor is color blind. Okay, the sensors and cameras are color blind. And on top of the sensor is a color filter array, which is supposed to split up the colors or split up the light into red, green, and blue onto individual pixels. And at that point, the sensor reads that and knows that the light levels coming from this pixel is red, the light levels coming from this one is green and red. And that gets converted into from the analog level to a digital level into ones and zeros. So it goes from a voltage analog level, like electricity, and then to analog digital, or the AD converter. And all of that digital data is processed by your camera's processor. So the processor is looking at, okay, the camera's telling me I have a value of, say, 200 on red, 300 on green, and maybe 100 on blue. So let's say that would be a picture of a red rose, for example. Lots of red and green and very little blue. And at that point, Olympus decides, okay, how do I want these colors to look when I create the image file? And they may decide that the absolute red coming from the sensor, let's make it a little bit, let's reduce the intensity of that red a little bit, or let's reduce the intensity of the green a little bit. And then let's apply a little bit of a yellow tint to the entire image. Let's adjust the white balance to the entire image. And, the end result is you get slightly different looks out of different cameras. And a really good example of this is, either the art filters in the Olympus cameras, or Fuji's done a real good job with branding their color science via calling them film simulations. So when the Fujifilm camera takes a picture of a red rose, and then you say, okay, apply the Provia film simulation to it, it's going to try and keep those colors as natural looking as possible, that like we see with the naked eye. But if you tell it to apply sort of the Eterna profile to this to the colors coming into the camera, then the algorithms are going to say, okay, let's reduce the saturation a little bit on all the colors, increase the contrast a little bit across the board, and then maybe reduce the overall exposure just a hair. And let's clip the highlights a little bit, but let's and then clip the blacks. So they apply like this algorithm, and that in itself is altogether as combined as your color science. So I hope I explained that well enough. But yeah, it's just basically how every manufacturer interprets the colors coming from the sensor, and that's all it is. And a lot of that can be done in post-processing, like in Lightroom or in Workspace. To a great extent, it's not quite the same as doing everything in camera, because the camera is dealing with the raw data before it writes the image file. And when you work with the image file in your processing software, it's not the same, because it's not accessing that raw data directly. Because even the raw files, they say raw, but even the raw files are processed slightly by every manufacturer. Okay, so that was a long answer on a topic I know very little about, but that sums it up, I think. Who is Severin? I was having the same problem with my aftermarket batteries for my G9, so I got an aftermarket charger. Was it just as sensitive as the one that comes with the camera? Okay. The aftermarket chargers, I don't have any issues with. I just, the only reason I have so many generic batteries is because I want the chargers that comes with it. I don't care about the batteries too much. I just look for the charger I want, and then whatever batteries come with it, I just look for the cheapest deal. Like, I just got this charger with 2 Nikon batteries, right? And this is a great charger for $9. Charger and 2 batteries for $9. I ordered this yesterday, or 2 days ago, and it came in yesterday. And yeah, the batteries are crap, right? They probably don't have anywhere near the capacity of the Nikon original, but I really just wanted the charger. Yes, Sam, the SQAI. I think that's the latest one in the SQ series. So I'm waiting for that to pop up because I've seen an ERTZ and I've seen the SQA, but I'm waiting for like the SQAI. I thought there was one after that, and I'm just waiting for it to come up locally in my camera store because they get them in time to time as used. I might buy one online, but I think I'm going to have to buy a 5x4 camera. But there's a thrift store about an hour and a half away from me that I think I saw a lot of 5x4 cameras there. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Lauren. I tried. Lauren is a very competent photographer, and I'm sure he has a lot more experience than I do, and I appreciate that. Rob, the Fuji GW69 Pro 3 rangefinder gives image quality almost as good as a 4x5 with a lot less trouble and probably at a lower cost and trouble. Yeah, you know, I really, that's a big camera though, but I do like the aspect ratio of 6:9. That is very attractive to me. And I think there's another Fujifilm medium format camera that goes for about $600 or $700. I can't remember the name of it. So I did look at some of those. I may go 120 film if I can find a super wide aspect ratio camera, but they are really expensive. But the 6x9s aren't too bad. They're less than $1,000. The only challenge I have with that is it's a fixed lens, right? So I'm kind of stuck with, I think it's a 90mm lens on that. And I'm not sure that would be as much fun as, you know, shopping for lenses and things like that. But I did look at a GW69, which it is kind of a really, it looks like an excellent camera. Has a little counter on the bottom and stuff, right? Thank you, CC. Let's see. My goal is that if Sony images in the past looked a bit more bluish green, they were shooting for sharpness. Cool looks sharper than warm. Okay. I never thought about cooler colors looking sharper, but I guess perceptually they might. That's as good a guess as any, right? Sam, it took me a little while to realize that RAW was processed by Olympus as there was no way to correct lens profiles in Photoshop or Lightroom, and then found out that Olympus applies it in camera. Yeah, it's all automatic. Like I said, manufacturers, they apply processing even to the RAW file, so you're not getting a true RAW file, which is fine. It's close enough, right? You know, it'd be interesting. It just reminded me is that if the EM1 Mark III, oh no, it's not. Never mind. What I was going to say was if they start adding 14-bit raw processing, but I don't think that processor's capable of outputting 14-bit raw. If they end up using the same processor that we have now. And you can always go online and look at the specs. I think it's the Sony IMX something. But you can look at the specs of the processor online, and it'll tell you what it's capable of. And that processor, I believe that processor is the same one that they use in the GH5. And look what they did with video in the GH5 with the same processor that Olympus is using. So it's not, you know, the sensor really is extremely capable. It's just a matter of what processor you put behind it to drive everything it's capable of. And Olympus, obviously, they went the, photographer route, right? Images and stills, and they didn't put too much effort into video or, they probably put a lot of effort into it because that's not their area. But they have a lot of catching up to do with Panasonic. And Panasonic is starting to catch up, I think, in the image processing side to Olympus. They still don't have a lot of the same features. So a good example is like you can do, I think, 4K 60, 10-bit 422 output video on the GH5, and you can't do that on the M1 Mark II, but you can do 60 frame per second pro capture on the M1 Mark II, but you cannot do that in the GH5. So that's just an example of where they kind of split their research and development, right? Given the same exact processor, all of the CPU behind the processor is where a lot of the development and features come from a camera. Have you had any problems with the M10 Mark II kit lens? After 2 years, 4 months, it wouldn't respond. The EVF bank dealer sent to Olympus, who replaced it even though out of warranty. Great service, but boring. Barney, was it the pancake lens or was it the standard zoom lens? Because I can tell you there's a very distinctive problem with each of those. The pancake lens, the power zoom lens, can, and I'm guessing, but the power zoom lens can become inoperable. And when you put it on a camera, it'll just say check lens, and it won't zoom in or out or function at all. And your camera will just be, will just have this error message on it. And I think that's because of the action of the power zoom going in and out. The little wires inside must break away or give way a little bit inside to where, it just makes the lens inoperable. And that's not a common problem, but it's a known problem in that lens. So maybe that's why they replaced it for free if it's that lens. If it's the oh, okay, so you have the pancake lens. So yeah, if that's what happened, like you put it on your camera and it kept saying, check lens, I think it's because, maybe I should send mine in and see what they do. Man, I'd love to get another free pancake lens, because that's what happened to mine. And I've had 2 of these kit zoom lens with the manual zoom. And this is the version 2, but the version 1 lens, I did have one and I had to return it because right at the 30 millimeter mark, there was a dead, I don't know, there's a contactor on the zoom to tell the camera what focal length you're at. So there's electrical contacts inside the zoom. And right at the 30 millimeter mark, the lens would go dead and say check lens. I would get an error. Whenever I went right over the 30 millimeter mark, and that was also very, like I said, I don't want to say common, but it was a known problem with the version 1 lens of this. I've had this lens for a year and a half, and I haven't had any problems with it. And I use this lens a lot. Even to this day, even though I got the pancake from Panasonic. But okay, yeah, but the pancake zoom, that's probably what happened. Lauren is 75 here, so I think I'm off to, oh, that's awesome. I'm so jealous. Man, when I'm the oldest one in the family, I'm moving to Florida. I don't care. Ugh, I just have too many roots right now. But anyway, I hate the cold. It was like 18 degrees last night. Oh my God. I wasn't outside, but I try to save energy, so I don't turn the heat on in my house very often. And but I don't, I want to go out and do photo walks and things. But when it gets below freezing, that's kind of my limit in terms of what I can handle cold-wise. If there's no wind, if there's any wind at all, it better be in the 50s at that point. But if there's no wind, above freezing, I can operate to some extent, but then my fingers get so cold, I can't feel the camera anymore. So it just makes it doubly hard to do photo walks. And that's why I'm doing so many live streams now, because I can just sit here in the comfort of my home and stay nice and warm. And, like the last tutorial I did on Flash or whatever, I did that indoors, right? Because it's just so cold out. Does EVF use more power than live view back screen? I heard Robin say it once. I thought it was the other way around. Uh, Currently, the EVF does use more electricity. I don't know if it's because of the actual draw on the uh, EVF itself, meaning to illuminate the image, or if it is the um, processing power required to draw, because the EVF in our cameras are 2.3 megapixels, right? 2.3 million dots. And on the live view, it's only 1 million. So the processor has to work twice as hard to generate an image on the EVF. And the EVF, depending on the camera, can be 30 frames, 60 frames, 120 frames per second. And if it has to do that at 2.3 million megapixels, it's going to put a lot of drain on the processor versus your live view, which only has to be this is running at probably 30 frames per second at 1 megapixel. So it's using a quarter of the processor energy as it would to generate the images you see on your EVF. And I think that's the main draw of power on the EVS, because in terms of luminance and brightness, this live view is clearly, it's brighter, generates more light than the little EVF inside. So in terms of light energy, I think the live view uses more, but in terms of processing power, I believe the EVF uses more. But it's very subtle. I wouldn't worry about it. I don't think there's enough difference that you could actually measure. So if you take 1,000 pictures with the EVF and then you use the live view instead, you might get 1,010 pictures. Like the difference I think is that small, but there's a lot of other things you can do to extend battery life than worrying about using the EVF or the live view. All right. Hi, Rob. Thanks for replying to the M5 Mark II saving settings question. Okay, you're welcome. The flash tutorial is great. I have no idea whatsoever about flashes. Well, if you have a flash, you should practice a little. I mean, a flash can make all the difference. That's really the biggest step you can take in photography, is learning to use a flash. You'll get much better colors, more contrast. It's just like getting a new camera when you take a picture with a flash, if you know how to use it. And there's so many things you can do with a flash. And if you see my channel, I got a lot of tutorials like on flower photography using flash, and then I have a few on portraits. But if you're brave, Rob, check eBay for medium format digital camera. The Mamiya 645 AF for $299. Really? Wow, 645 medium format. Interesting. I don't know about digital medium format. I'm excited about doing film medium to large format, like a 5x4, but digital, I don't know. It doesn't excite me as much as doing it in film. Yeah, Kostov knows what I'm talking about. 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Today it warmed up a little bit during the day. I'm in the 40-degree range Fahrenheit. Paul is saying he doesn't get the negative reviews on the M510 grips, but a $10,000 Leica with no grip is okay. I know. I mean, I was looking at the Leica M something film camera, and it's like $5,000, and it's a 35 millimeter film camera. I'm like, it's not like the image quality is going to be any different, right? Maybe with a good lens and all, yeah, there's something to that, but ultimately the image quality is based on the film. So I don't know, but we really can't say anything because look at the Pen F. It was 11 or 12. It was like a $1,200 camera when it came out, and spec wise, it didn't impress anybody, right? At that price point. But I think at the consumer level price points, you know, $2,000 and less, people will nitpick at everything. It's been, no, I shouldn't say nitpick, but it's so competitive that when one camera has this and the other camera has this, and one doesn't have that or this, you know, they point those things out like it's a problem. Film cameras are just shutters and lenses. Yeah, I mean they're a light box, right? But lenses, that's not a small thing, right? The lenses can really, I don't know, the lenses can be magic sometimes. Maybe it's all in my head. I don't know. Come over to Australia. It's 41 Celsius. Man, that's hot. But I don't mind it. I would prefer hot weather over cold weather any day. But I hear there's a lot of fires over there right now. I haven't really followed the news lately, but something came up about how they're still dealing with that. On the EM10-2, the AF keeps trying to focus even when nothing changing. There is a setting in the camera. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I think you might be referring to the setting in the camera that says continuous AF on. Let me see if I can show everybody what he's talking about and just confirm what you're talking about. It's in the AF menu. All right, hopefully you guys can see this. There's a setting here, full-time AF. So you can turn this on. And what that does is, even if you're not pushing the shutter button, the camera's going to try to continually focus on something, right? So why on earth, and when I first got this camera and did my settings, you know, settings for beginners tutorial, I didn't know what it was for. I just said, I don't know what that's for. But now I do. Now I know what that's for. That's for when you hook up the camera to an external recording monitor. I packed mine away. But if you record externally, you're not pushing the shutter button or recording anything internally in the camera. So the camera's not going to focus. So this is the way to turn the focus on, so that the camera will automatically focus while you're recording externally. So I think hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Sam, the Pen F is awesome. Like I said, I bought it purely for cosmetic reasons, but now this camera, I mean, this is if I could only have one Olympus camera, this would be it. Despite everything that's come out or is going to come out, this will be a camera I will keep. I should get a second one in case this one breaks down. Or let me rephrase that, if I drop it and break it, is more likely. Yeah. So I'm with you, Sam. Wow, 1/3 of Germany was burned. That's horrible. It's kind of sad that Olympus is not considering add EVF in a pen. Yeah, will the Pen F get any update? Yeah, I seriously doubt the Pen F will get an update. You know, and I've said this before. You know, I read an article in DP Review, and they interviewed the guy that had some. You know, he was from Olympus, right? He was Olympus rep. And they asked him, you know, about the camera, and he told them, we're not planning on doing a version 2 of this camera. This is it. We're going to make one. So even when they first made this camera, they were never planning to make a second one. But I think there was the caveat, unless it sells like freaking hotcakes, then yeah, we'll make a second one. But we're making this as a one-off. We're not planning on making a version 2. So I don't think this sold like hotcakes. So even though it's not planned, maybe Olympus will decide to do another one-off and say, okay, this is the Pen F2, but don't count on a Pen F3, you know. Let's see. Did I fix the rubber on my Pen F? I did. If you look at the if you're talking about the thumb grip, you'll notice that that is not the original thumb grip, because I think what happened is I sent this camera in about a month after I got it because it had some issue under warranty, and when I got it back, it was perfectly fine. But about a month after that, I got it back, the thumb grip came off. Because underneath this thumb grip is a little tiny screw I think they had to get to open the camera to fix it. So when they put the thumb grip back on, they probably didn't put new glue underneath. They probably just used the glue that was already there. So it just didn't stay. So I got, and then this was recommended by a viewer because I had no idea this stuff existed. But this is like clay. It's called sugru. And it's like clay, and you just form it to the way that you want it. So I made it a little bit bigger than the original thumb grip. It sticks out a little more. It looks a lot worse on camera than it does in real life. In real life, it's not really noticeable. So I have a little bit bigger thumb grip now, which helps. And it's been on here for about maybe 3 years now, no problems, and it's not coming off. That's Sugru, S-U-G-R-U, I think. It's awesome. Yeah, I like that too, Plato, being chronologically enhanced. Yeah, my tolerance to cold. I don't know if that's just a mental thing, right? But I definitely like it a little warmer as I get older. But I've never liked the cold. February 12th for the EM1 Mark III. Okay. Let's see what it brings to the table. I'm excited to see the 12 to 40 lens. And, you know, what I don't want to happen, though, is just have an EM1X in a compact body. Because that's all they did with the M5 Mark III, right? Is give us the M1 Mark II in a compact body. So if the M1X, if the M1 Mark III is that, you know, I'm going to be, okay. Yeah, handheld high res, some little better focusing. But I really want to see, like I said, they need to surprise me with something, really something. With that new processor, they can do so much by putting a new CPU behind any sensor. Sitting at home fighting the flu. Oh, I'm sorry, Mick. But I'm glad you could join us. But I'm sorry you're sick. I had the flu once. It was terrible. Rob, how does the black and white in a Pen F in your Pentax photos? In Instagram, they looked really good. I think you're asking me, Roman, how do they compare? They don't compare at all. This is my Pentax K10D. I recently posted some images on my Instagram. And you can see this is a monster camera compared to my EM5 Mark III or Pen F, just since I have them here, you know, just to give you some perspective. But the Pentax KD actually doesn't even take black and white images. I have to take everything in color and then convert it in post-processing. And while I was in post-processing, I just, pumped the contrast and dehaze and all that stuff to make the images kind of pop a little bit. All that stuff I can do in camera on the Pen F, but on the K10 I cannot. So I had to process the black and white images. And the other thing is that Pentax only shoots up to ISO 1600. So I have a kit lens, so I was stuck at shutter speeds, close to 1 second. So, about a third of the images were blurry. They had image blur, even though that supposedly has in-body stabilization. So yeah, there's no comparison. The Pen F is far superior black and white. One, because it can do black and white in camera. And two, because you have so much control. Oh, Happy New Year, Mark. On the M5 Mark III, are there any books, guides for this camera available as of yet? Not that I know of. I should do more tutorials on that camera and walkthroughs. I have one video now where I talk about all the settings that I use, which is, fairly comprehensive coverage. And then, unless you know the M5 Mark III has these features, a lot of the tutorials I have online apply to the M5 Mark III as well, like live composite, focus bracketing, and I'm sure some other things. So that's, and then check out Peter, Forrest Guard, Robin Wong, Jimmy Chang. They do a lot. Robin and Peter do more tutorials than Jimmy, I think. But they have a lot of tutorials too. Which fast prime do you prefer for street walk? 1725, Ollie Panny 25. I prefer the Ollie 17 millimeter. I'm a little anxious to try the Panasonic 15 f1.7. But yeah, the 17 millimeter f1.8 from Olympus is my preferred street photo walk lens. If I was going to do that specifically, a lot of times I just go out with the kit lens, the 14 to 42 or the 12 to 32, because I have to vlog at the same time. But if I didn't have to vlog, I would go with the 17 millimeter prime, because it's just wide enough, right, to kind of capture the environment, but it's not so tight that it sort of crops everything out. 25 is good if you can work at distances. So like the other night I went out with the 25 millimeter and I was taking a lot of pictures from my car or from across the street, and it was okay, right? Because the field of view is a little bit narrower on the 25 than a 17. But if I'm walking around on the street, yeah, the 17. Oh, hey, Flying Fish Fido, thanks. I'm glad you could join us, even if just for a little bit. Roman says, the Olympus guys told me in a photo booth that they wanted to cancel the production of the M5 series and only keep the M10 and M1 series, so they kept the line. Pen F did not sell well, but everybody loved it. Yeah, that's the problem, is how much can you segment your cameras, right? Because the M10 Mark II or the M10 series and the M5 series are very similar. Just basically one is weather sealed with a couple of more features. And now the EM5 Mark III is very similar to the EM1 Mark II, but just more compact. So if they wanted to trim down their line, I think the EM5 is the one to cut out. If you're going to cut out between the EM10, EM5, EM1. But that being said, I could argue that they should make more cameras and segment their cameras even more. Because what they really need to do, for example, is make an EM5 Mark III version B or something that has a normal tilt screen instead of this flip around. Because for photography, you know, a lot of photographers prefer the flip and tilt rather than this, you know, fully articulating. So they can make two versions of this camera, one with a tilt screen, one with a, you know, flip screen, so that we have a choice, right? Because the Pen F, for example, there's a lot of people that love this camera, but this screen flipping around was a deal breaker. They didn't want to deal with this. You know, I can think of like a few viewers on the channel here, and also if you ever watch Mattis Burling's channel, he got the Pen F, but he couldn't deal with this. He would rather have a tilt. And that's a guy that has, you know, more cameras than I do. One of the few. Well, not one of the few, but he has a lot of cameras. And does a lot of street photography, Mattis Burling. And he has a great channel talking about different cameras. All right. Do you happen to have an opinion on the stylus? I do not, other than the Stylus XZ2 is Olympus's compact camera, similar to the, I guess like the Fujifilm X100F, or that's not a good example, but it's a compact camera, but it has all of the Olympus features in it. And, you know, and I think it's got the smaller sensor in it, like the TG5, you know, cell phone size sensor. So it's not going to be a low light camera, but for general photography, it has a lot of terrific features in it, not too dissimilar from the EM10 Mark I, or maybe even the Mark II. It has a lot of features in it. So I think it's a great little compact camera with a regular tilt screen. It doesn't have that flip around. And the people that own it, that have talked to me on this channel before, love it. So if you can get it cheap enough, you know, $100, $200, just get it. It's a nice little camera. Oh yeah, the other thing with the different stylus is the different models have different zoom focal lengths. So I would just get the faster lens rather than the longer lens or longer zoom range. I'm not that familiar with that line, but I do remember different models had different focal length or zoom ranges. So get the one with the fastest aperture lens, because you're going to need as much light as you can. I have to go back to work. Okay, flying, see ya. Thanks for coming in. Too bad the Pana aperture ring isn't functioning on the Ollie body. I think you mean the focusing ring, right? Corona or Corna, yeah. It doesn't have a focus or it doesn't have a ring at all. It just has a zoom ring. And Corna's saying the 20mm Pana is also his go-to lens with the 17 Ollie. Yeah, the 20mm Panasonic is very attractive because of the pancake size. I don't think it really adds anything over the 17mm other than just being pancake. Yeah, Ron thinks the Pen F had lower sales because of the price. No question. Price is always key in a market, you know, and apparently Olympus, people didn't think Olympus was worth $1,200 at the time for the specs that it had. And that's the problem. When you're in that market segment, you have to the competition is so fierce, and they put Panasonic and Olympus together in the same boat, side by side, in terms of perception, right? People don't think one brand is superior to the other by any large margin, not like putting a Leica next to the Pen F. People say, well, of course the Leica's $5,000, right? Even though the specs are lower. So I think the Pen F was kind of a victim of that, where it had excellent build quality. I mean, I think I wouldn't say Leica level quality, but definitely extremely high quality over any of the other cameras, um, and any of its competition for that matter. Because this camera is substantial. But the consumer level, their perception was, Olympus can't be charging $1,200 for a camera like this. It's an Olympus, right? So I think that was part of it. I agree with you on that. Oh, John says Robin Wong prefers the 25 because there's less distortion. So, maybe slightly. I just 25 is too tight for me. I don't mind a little bit of distortion, and it's really only apparent when you're close to something, right? I mean, if you're taking a picture like this close, yeah, there's going to be distortion. And the 25, I think, honestly, is actually a little sharper contrast to your lens from the images that I've seen from my own portfolio. I think it is a superior lens optically to the 17, especially wide open. But I just prefer the focal length 17 over 25, and that's it. How about the 20 millimeter for street? Yeah, a lot of people use that. It's a little tight for me, though. I think it's just a little bit too tight. I prefer a little bit wider angle, and that's mainly because of the area that I live in. Because when I go into Alexandria, you're like, your nose is like pressing up against the building because everything is so packed and tight together. You can't like stand too far back and take a picture, otherwise you're going to get hit by a bus, literally hit by a bus or run over by a bicycle. I think there's about a million bicycles in Alexandria. God knows why. They're all and the scooters. Oh my God! Don't get me started on the freaking scooters everywhere. I don't know what's going on in that town, but they need to ban the scooters. The little two-wheelie things that they stand on, look like a pogo stick with two wheels. I mean, I don't know how many times I almost got ran over by one of those things because somebody's going down the sidewalk on that at 10 miles an hour. Anyhow, I don't know why I'm ranting about scooters. Yeah, Paul, thanks. Yeah, I try. Hopefully I got I've covered most things on the Olympus cameras. Okay, good night, Juba. Oh, the Pan of 15. Yeah, the Pan of 15 would be awesome. That's just a little bit wider than the 17. That would be pretty good. I could deal with that. What really excites me about that 15 millimeter though is it's the images I've seen look very contrasty with rich colors. I think because it has that Leica name on it, right? One day, if I can get one for around $200-300, I might splurge on it. But I just don't have that kind of spare cash right now. You cannot see screws on the Pen F. That's true. I think that was a little overkill personally, though. I don't care if I can see the screws on a camera. More screws the better, if you ask me, because I can tighten them down if I see a loose screw. But they did go through a lot of trouble to make sure that no screws are exposed on this camera. And I guess that would appeal to a lot of people too. It wouldn't have bothered me either way, personally, but Roman's right. Anyone with a Panasonic 14mm f2.5? I've heard two versions of this lens that I think are credible. One person said that they had the 20mm and the 14mm from Panasonic, and he said the 14mm is so much sharper, he sold his 20mm. It wasn't about the focal length, he really loved the 14mm, and he strongly suggested I get the 14 and not the 20. Another person said, don't get the 14 millimeter because it has a lot of chromatic aberrations, where you get sort of that purple fringing in the highlights and shadows, in strong contrast scenes. And he said it was unbearable, and he just hates the lens for that. And when I looked into it, he's right. There is a lot of CA in that lens in certain kinds of photos. So you have to kind of decide what is what bothers you the least, right? Do you want? But I think they're both sharp lenses, so I would pick the lens based on the focal length. That's my primary choice when I look at a lens. Is I look at the focal length before I look at really anything else. Particularly with Olympus, I know all of their lenses are exceptional, right? They're going to give you, for the money, you're going to get exceptional quality glass at every price point. So if Olympus is charging $1,000 for a lens, you're getting $1,000 worth, in my opinion. And if they're charging, for example, the 45 millimeter f1.8 goes for about $250 all day long. That is an exceptional lens for the money. So as the prices get lower, the value you're getting is much better, in my opinion. And then when the prices get higher, you're getting what you pay for, in my opinion. You're not getting overcharged, is what I'm saying. The only exceptions I can think of is maybe that 12 to 50 lens. I feel like they were asking $600 for that lens new, and then on the used market, it sells for like $150 all day long because it's just not a $600 lens, Ron's saying he had the 15 millimeter from Panasonic and a 17 and sold the 17. Yeah, I think you're right. When I tested those two lenses, and the reason, because I did check both lenses, I brought my Olympus Pen PL8, and I put the 17 millimeter on. Oh, I'm sorry. I put the 12 millimeter lens on from Olympus, and then I put the 15 millimeter on from Panasonic. And because I vlog, I wanted to test specifically the video autofocus of the 15 millimeter versus the 12 millimeter. Because the 12 millimeter was still about $150 more than the Panasonic. And by all accounts, that Panasonic 15 millimeter is super sharp contrast. It's a great lens. But it did not autofocus in video at all. I mean, it was so slow. And when I put the 12 millimeter on, it was like this. So that was the reason I made that choice at the time. But now that the EM1 Mark II and the EM5 Mark III have excellent autofocus, even when I put these Panasonic lenses on them in video mode, the autofocus is still excellent. Very comparable to the Olympus lenses. I mean, I can't tell any difference. If there is a difference, it's not enough for me to care or measure for. I mean, I did test them once, and there was time to time, the Panasonic took a little bit longer to focus. Like 1 out of 10 times, it would take a little longer to focus. But that's nothing, really, in terms of autofocus video. Because autofocus video, you're always struggling with focusing. So that's why I didn't buy it. But now that I have these cameras, it's back on my list again as a lens I want to get because I know it's going to focus fine with these cameras that I have now. Hi Rob, I recently bought the 60mm f2.8 macro. What flash would you recommend for macro photography? Really, I think for macro work, maybe just a small flash like this, a Godox TT350. The only challenge I have with this is you have to buy the trigger with it, which dang it. You know, I dropped my bag and everything fell out and scattered. And now I can't find. So just before the live stream, I quickly picked up all this crap off the floor and put it places. Now I can't find where I put the trigger. Dang, I'm gonna need that next week too. But you have to buy a trigger with this separately, and the trigger is about half the size of this flash. So it's a little bit awkward for macro work. It doesn't affect the macro work, but I just, what I would do probably, you know, the thing with macro, they do sell macro dedicated flashes, and they sell rings that you can put on the front of your camera. So the flash, you get a flash, a ring flash for your camera for macro work. So I would look for, if you really want to get serious in the macro, I would look for a ring flash that you can attach to the front of the camera. And get the cheapest one you can. And it's going to be a manual only type flash, so you're not going to have TTL and all that. But with macro work, you're usually almost full manual anyway. And you have to get really good at, you know, if you're trying to get it in one shot, you should be okay. But if you're trying to focus stack or focus bracket, you're going to have to get good at with the settings for the cycle, timing cycles and things for using flash and focus bracketing. Man, but I've done a lot of macro work. Well, not a lot, but when I do macro photography, this is the flash that I use. And if you look at any of my videos on macro photography, like extension tubes and things, this is the flash that I use. But I've never shot with the 60mm macro lens, because that gives you a true one-to-one field of view, or magnification, I should say. So I don't know what this would look like in under those conditions, because the magnification I'm getting is about 0.5, you know, about half what you would get with that lens. And this flash looks fine. But macro photography is a very precision type photography, so this may not be appropriate either. I'm sure it'll be fine, because it's just light, right? But this is what I used for most of my macro photography. A person that does a lot of macro photography and knows Olympus well is Robin Wong. You know, he might be able to recommend something. But I know ring flashes are very popular with macro photographers, and I think he said he just uses an Olympus flash similar to this with a diffuser, but I can't remember. Check out his channel. I think he has a video on macro photography that he may go into that. I just can't remember now. So yeah, that's the best I can do for you, AJ. But you can watch my videos on flower photography, macro photography with the extension tubes, where I use this flash, or I might be using a manual flash, but I use this flash a lot. And, you know, judge the results for yourself. And then check out Robin Wong's macro photography videos. So Cornet says the 20mm is sharper than the 14mm. I have no idea, to be honest. But those are the two things I've heard that I talked about earlier. Did you think about renting a Fuji FGX? No. You know, because it's like a couple $100 to rent it, right? And I'm never planning to buy it. So unless I have some job specific that I would need to rent a camera, I don't see the point in renting. Derek, Rob, please can you tell me where my highlights and shadows graph as disappeared when you helped me. It's not on any of the function buttons. It's not. You just so I assume, Derek, you saw the video where I have turned the highlights and shadows on. You just have to click the info button. So when you're in the live view, so let me get it. So like right now, right? It's just a normal view. And then you just toggle the info button like this until they show up. Let me see if I can get it to show. There, see? Just like that. So right now you can see the level meters. Now you see some exposure info. Now you're seeing the image only. And now you're seeing the highlight shadow. And then if it gets really bright, I should get red clipping. I have the shutter speed way up. But anyway, that's all you do. Is you toggle it. You toggle your live view with the info button. Yeah, I'm sorry I might have missed doing that in my last video, how I toggled between highlight shadow mode. Rob, can you talk about using the My Set and how to get best use out of it? I also don't understand how to use the dial functions. If you could do a tutorial. I do have a tutorial on the My Sets and stuff. Jen, I need to know which camera you have, and then I can kind of direct you to a video. Let me take a look here. If you have the EM10 Mark II, you want to watch episode number 46 on my channel. So just go to my channel and search for episode number 46, and that tells you how to program the My Sets and stuff on the EM10 Mark II, and it's very similar on all of the brands, on all of the cameras. Okay. Last year I purchased a cheap Artisans. Yeah, the 7 Artisans, they have a lot of cheap lenses that people seem to really like. I was thinking about maybe getting one for my Fujifilm, because I don't want to buy Fujifilm lenses. They're so freaking expensive. And it's not a camera I shoot a lot with, so I was thinking about getting one for my Fuji. Yeah, Corna, I don't know anything about the 12mm f1.2 from Panasonic. I downloaded manuals for the M10, M3. Without Rob's tutorials, I would still be struggling. Hey, John, how are you? I haven't said hello to you yet. John and I correspond via email time to time. I don't think I responded to your last email from last week. I'm sorry. I did get it, though. You emailed me about something. I can't remember now. I've been meaning to get back to you. The 16mm f1.4 from Sigma rivals the Olympus 17 f1.2 in photo quality, and both have weather sealing, autofocus, and it's lightning fast. Yeah, I mean, everybody seems to love the Sigma lenses, but I can tell you that my experience with Sigma was not as rosy on my Nikon. When I had my Nikon, or on my Nikon D750, I had the I'm sorry, when I had my Nikon D7100, before I had the D750, I bought the trinity of Sigma art lenses, the 50mm f1.4, the 24-105 f4, and the 18-35 f1.8. And then I had one other one, some other zoom that was a piece of crap. But the 50mm and the 18-35, I had focus lock issues. The camera would think it had focus lock, But when I got back and looked at the images on the computer, they were out of focus. And that was not an uncommon complaint with those lenses, was getting focus lock confirmation when it really wasn't focused properly. The 50mm f1.4 art lens, and that was a $900 or $1,000 lens for a 50mm. Yeah, fantastically sharp, beautiful bokeh. But not only did I have the focus locking issues, and it wasn't constant. It was just time to time, right? Enough that it bothered me. But it had a little squeak in the lens, not all the time, but sometimes I would focus and then I'd hear this little week, you know. I'm like, this is a brand new lens that I never dropped, right? Back then I was a little more careful. So I sold all of those 3 lenses that I had from Sigma at, 50% loss. Just maybe 6 months after. I had them for about 6 months, give or take, and just bought Nikon glass. So I've always been leery of buying Sigma lenses because supposedly I had, the very best from Sigma at the time, and they're still well-regarded lenses. Now, the only benefit, the only thing that gives me little comfort is that at least on a mirrorless system, you should not be having focus lock issues because it's focusing right off of the sensor. But I don't know, and I haven't researched it at all because I'm just not interested in Sigma anymore. So, check the forums of people that buy Sigma's lenses and ask them, are they having problems? Maybe they're not having any issue at all, and I suspect they're not because, like I said, the focus locking is right off the sensor now versus going through a separate autofocus sensor like on a DSLR. But yeah, I just gave up on Sigma. Never mind, they're big and heavy and just bulky, but oh, Jen has the EM5 Mark II. Yeah, the custom settings on that particular video will work on the EM5 Mark II, Jen. So you're welcome, AJ. Let's see. Olympus should give the old legacy lenses the focus bracketing and focus stacking. I think they would if they could. I don't think they're not doing it for marketing reasons. But I don't know. See, Patrick has just chimed in. The Sigma 60mm f1.4 on a Sony mount has focus lock problems at f2. So yeah, they still have problems even on a more recent lens. I think that's a more recent lens than the ones I had. Hi, Alan. He's asked me, how do I get along with the Panasonic GX85 the other week? Yeah, it was much better. I'm now able to handle the camera and get it to do what I want for the most part. Because, like with any new camera, there's the growing pains of getting used to where the buttons are and how to program and set up everything the way you want. Because I'm a very JPEG-centric shooter. But I went out with it with the 25mm. The only challenge I'm still having is a little bit in the handling, and it's not the camera's fault. It's just designed this way. It's just the thumb grip. And then this little tiny wheel right here is right on the thumb grip. And this is how I hold the camera. So sometimes I knock this a little bit. And then there's a very, not this one, but yeah, this is the main problem I have with the camera. Because all of the touch screen issues I was having and the buttons and stuff, because the buttons are real tiny, I've gotten past all of that. This is the only problem I'm having now. But other than that, this is a fabulous camera for me. The EVF doesn't bother me. I know a lot of people are having tearing problems. I'm not having any issues with that. Because I shoot mostly with the live view anyway. And I'm no longer having problems with the buttons or the touch screen, and the menus are awesome. Everybody should do menus like Panasonic, because every manufacturer sucks at doing menus. I mean, my Fuji menus suck, Olympus menus suck, the Nikon menus suck, and the Sony menus are beyond suck, okay? But Panasonic got it right. So I love that little camera for a lot of reasons. It has great, the L monochrome I really like, and I like how you can do some highlight shadows. I mean, it has a lot of great features. It lacks a lot of things that I love about Olympus, though. There's a lot of settings and bracketing that I can do in Olympus that I can't do in any other camera, and I think ergonomically, function-wise, and the Pen F is their best example of this. Is all of the controls that you have are perfect. For me, I have no problems. There's no tiny dials. Like when I put my thumb here, I'm not pushing any other buttons at the same time or moving a dial by accident. But on the GX85 and then on my Fujifilm X-T30, look at that. I've said this before, the stupid thumb grip, they got a Q button right here. I'm always hitting this frickin' button. And, I haven't turned it off. You can turn it off now. They did a firmware update because a lot of people complained about that. But I like the Q button for what it does. I just don't like where it's placed. So I leave it on for its functionality because there's a button there. You might as well use it. Why turn it off? That's just stupid to me. But at the same time, I'm always accidentally pushing it. So I've never had a problem with Olympus. The only problem, okay, let me rephrase that. The only problem I've ever had with Olympus is on the EM10 Mark II. God knows where it is right now. It's probably outside. But I can show you on the EM5 Mark III because the buttons are the same. This dial is too loose on the EM10 Mark II. Time to time, I will accidentally move this. At least on the EM5 Mark III, they're not stiff, but they're not as loose where you just breathe on it and the thing moves. On the EM10 Mark II. But that's the only problem. But I've kind of gotten used to it to where I'm not bumping it as much, and I naturally can check my settings now. But yeah. Anyway. So the GX85, yeah, fabulous camera, other than that one little issue on the thumb for me. Elaine's saying, I have an OMD with a 42 f1.8 on it. It seems there's a big lag between clicking the shutter and the showing up on the back of the screen. It seems that the focus is no longer instant. Is it the 42 millimeter from Panasonic, or is it the 45 millimeter from Olympus? Because if it's the 42 millimeter from Panasonic, the only thing I can suggest is maybe check a firmware update on the lens. Or even if it's the Olympus, there may be a firmware update on the lens itself, so check that first. Other than that, I don't know what I can suggest to you to get better focus with a lens. The only other thing I can suggest is if somebody else has the same lens, try it on your camera, and then take your lens and try it on their camera, and try and narrow down where the problem is, if the problem is in the lens or if it's in the camera. So if your camera is the problem and not the lens, then that's going to take you in one direction. But if it's the lens itself, that'll take you in another direction. If the other person's lens is slow on both cameras and your lens is slow on both cameras, then it may just be a firmware update that may have changed. Because it's not uncommon to have compatibility issues between Panasonic and Olympus, and there's a lot of firmware updates on the lenses to fix those compatibility issues. Can you guys hear my dog howling? Anyway, I heard that the 7.5mm f2.8 Artisans is apparently okay for Astro. I would like to try it. Yeah, sir, that's still not a cheap lens though, right? That's still a couple $100, isn't it? And you're gonna have to shoot that thing wide open at f2.8, so I don't have any experience for that lens, but on paper it looks good, right? 7.5mm, so it's super wide and it's an f2.8, so it's fast enough that you can get 20-30 second exposures with that focal length and aperture. Yeah, so you can try it, and if you get it from Amazon, you can try it and return it if you don't like it. Question on high-speed sync flash. Does it mean a flash equipped with HSS will work with the EM1? Ooh, if it's the EM1 Mark 1, I wouldn't be able to answer you because I'm not that familiar with that camera. But the EM1 Mark 2, if it's an Olympus compatible flash with high-speed sync, like the Godox brands that I'm very familiar with, yeah, no problem, high-speed sync. So, but on the original EM1 Mark 1, I wouldn't be able to answer you. I don't know. The only thing I can tell you with high-speed sync is I really don't like to use high-speed sync because it reduces the power output from the flash, and you really need a very powerful flash to use high-speed sync. Like my Godox TT350, this little bitty flash here, this is painful to use in high-speed sync. It's almost unusable, even though it's high-speed sync compatible, because the flash is so tiny that when you put it in a high-speed sync mode, it just doesn't have enough light output to be of any use. So if you get a flash with high-speed sync, make sure it has at least 4 batteries, right? Or a lithium-ion battery. These little 2-battery flashes are not going to cut it in high-speed sync. If you can, you want to get at least an 8200 for high-speed sync. With this flash, high-speed sync is usable, and you'll be okay. And this is about a $300 flash, but it's worth every penny. So if you can, go for this. If you cannot, go for a flash, at least 4 batteries, and I highly recommend Godox because I think it's a good value. It's not the cheapest out there, but it's a good value. I heard the 7. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Elaine was talking about the 45. Okay. So, yeah, sorry, Elaine. On the 45mm, if the focus is noticeably slower now than it was before, you're going to have to see if it's your camera or your lens and try and figure out which one is the problem. Most likely it's the lens because you're not noticing problems with your other lenses, but do you have all the features in the Panasonic? No. Roman's asking, do all the features in the Panasonic as in the Olympus? No, there's not all the features. I mean, you got to understand, this is like it depends which camera I compare it to. But compared to my EM10 Mark II or my Pen F, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of the features that I would use in the Olympus cameras. Like, I can't do art bracketing. I think it has exposure bracketing. I don't think it has focus bracketing. It might. I haven't dug deep into it, but I know when I was setting the camera up, I wasn't able to use it or program things the same way I was able to do in my Olympus. So it's mostly to do with muscle memory and stuff, because when like I said, I'm like a surgeon on these Olympus cameras. I can get whatever I want out of them. And then when I go to a new camera like the Panasonic, it's very awkward at first. So there's little tiny things like that. But the GX85 has more features than the Olympus in terms of like the 4K photo mode, right, where it captures, I don't know, 20 or 30 pictures in 4K mode, and which is, I think, effectively 8 megapixels. And the EM10 Mark II does not have that. The Pen F does not have that. They don't even have 4K recording. The EM10 Mark III doesn't have that. So in some areas it has features that our cameras do not. But the EM5 Mark III, this costs twice as much as the GX85. So of course this is going to have more features. So yeah, I think for the money, this is, if you like the rangefinder style, this is probably the best value right now in the Micro Four Thirds market, because I bought mine with the kit lens for $325. This is an amazing value. If you don't like the rangefinder style, the EM10 Mark II is probably the best value on the market, in my opinion. Do I have all the okay, I'm sorry. Yes, this is live, Kurt. I'm just a little bit behind. I'm 8 minutes behind right now, because you said you made this comment at 5:32. It's now 5:40, so I got to talk faster. I say that all the time, right? I have an issue with my EM5 Mark III. Okay, Kurt. Go ahead and ask if you haven't already. Corner, that's so weird. Nearly everyone who owns more cams owns the EM10 Mark II, but no one does own the Mark III. Is the newer EM10 a downgrade to the EM2 Mark II? It's not really a downgrade. It's just it's just not as granular. It doesn't have quite as many. I don't know how to. For example, you can go directly to silent mode in the M10 Mark II. In the M10 Mark III, the only way to get to silent mode is through the advanced menu. And in the advanced menu, you're pretty much stuck in program mode. You're not able to customize, like go into aperture priority or change your color profiles, etc. So silent mode's only available in the advanced program mode. Also, the M10 Mark III doesn't have custom settings like my sets, and the M10 Mark II does. So that there's certain limitations in the M10 Mark II. They tried to simplify it for what they thought the consumer market level would be for that camera. And some people love that. They're so happy that the menus have been simplified and don't have as many features. They just want to take pictures. And then other people like myself, that's a deal breaker. I'll never buy an EM10 Mark III because it doesn't have the my sets. In particular, that's the one deal breaker for me. Some of the other things I don't care about, like silent shutter and things, but so I wouldn't call it a downgrade because it has 4K video, which the M10 Mark II does not. It's just really a different camera. They slim the menu down. Night photography. Do you always shoot wide open? My idea is having ISO as low as 800, 1/15th of a second instance. Yes, I almost always shoot as wide open as I can. Like kit lenses are 3.5 and my primes are 1.8. And on the M5 Mark III, I can handhold down to 6 seconds. But typically I shoot at 1/15th or 1/20th of a second. With no problem at all. And I still get sharp images for static images, right? For static still life. If anybody's walking around, they're going to be blurred a little bit at those shutter speeds. And I shoot, and it's so dark when I shoot, I end up shooting at high ISOs, like, 6400 ISO on the EM5, and then I go up to 25,000 ISO on the EM10 and the Pen F, just to keep that shutter speed up if I want to capture motion. Trying to decide between a GX9 and a Pen F. I would get the Pen F. Unless, I can't see any reason to buy GX9 over a Pen F personally. If you like to shoot JPEG the Pen F, if this is your second camera, I would get the Pen F. If it's your first camera, I would get the Pen F. I always tell people that it's a good first camera and it's a good second camera, but it's not a good upgrade camera. Don't upgrade to a Pen F ever. Email coming out, Mamiya Press and the Super 23, great basic 6x9s. Okay, I'll take a look. When shooting in A/S mode, indoor at my condo, sometimes my shots become blank in preview mode. My LCD display is fine. It displays the timestamps and details, but the image is blank. It happens often. Ooh, what would be causing that? The only thing I can tell you is if it's happening often enough, try shooting in silent mode and see if it still happens. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to send the camera in to get it checked. But if it doesn't happen in silent mode, that means there's something wrong with the mechanical shutter. It's staying closed too long and it's causing your pictures to be blank. If it happens with the shutter in silent mode, that means there's probably something electrically wrong with the sensor or somewhere else in the circuitry. But if it works in silent mode, at least that's a workaround a broken shutter, right? But either way, you're going to need to get that sent in because it shouldn't be doing that. It's weird that it doesn't do it in program mode or manual mode, only in aperture shutter. That's weird. But that's the only thing I can suggest is maybe try shooting in silent shutter and see if it still happens. I gotta talk a lot faster. I'm 13 minutes behind now. Black and white shoot EM10 Mark II, also an issue with front wheel. Yeah, me too. Oh, you heard the dog. God, that was a while ago. Ming has the M1 Mark I. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't able to help you with that one then. I can't find the graph highlights and shadows EM10. It's totally not there even when I press F2. The actual graph is not showing. You need to make sure that your button setting is right. I'm going to do it on my Pen F, but it's the same on the EM10 Mark II. No, it's not. What am I saying? It's same on the EM5 Mark III. I don't know where I put my EM10. Okay. Let me just check button menu. So go into your button menu. Uh-oh. My green screen is blanking it out. Hold on. Let me turn off my green screen for a second so you can see this. Where is my, there it is. All right. Now you should be able to see this. This is your button menu, right? You want to go to the button menu in here. And then in this menu, I hope you can see this. Hold on. In this menu is the second one, multi-function button. or the highlight shadows, or it might say function 2 on your camera. So instead of a plus minus like you see on here, it'll say function 2 on the M10 Mark II. So you go to that, and you want to make sure that is set to multifunction, right? And then once it's set to multifunction, what you can do is just press it once, and then your highlight shadow should come up, right, when you hit the function 2 like that. But if it doesn't come up, press and hold the function 2 button, and then rotate your rear dial, like so. And then you'll get this is really awkward. So hold the function 2 button, and then you'll be able to rotate to the different functions. So maybe this is off on yours. So just rotate it till it says highlight shadow, and then it should just pop up, no problem. So hopefully that helps. Elaine, I was kind of following your thread there, but yeah, you just use the same method that you would use to update the camera's firmware. So you use Olympus Workspace to update the firmware on the lens as well. So you attach the lens to the camera, then you plug in the USB port, open up Workspace, do camera update, and it'll tell you if the lens has an update available or not from there. Jan's saying, don't talk faster. Kurt is saying, I watched your video on best settings. I copied the entire 45-minute video from my new camera and still get blank photos randomly. I don't know how to fix it, but I love the camera. Oh, yeah, sorry, Kurt. I don't have much more feedback on that. Too bad I didn't know that before about the M10 Mark III. But anyways, this is my first cam. Yeah, Corner, you're fine with the M10 Mark III. It's just little things, right? The My Sets was the deal breaker for me. Silent shutter was kind of a problem for others. And there was one or two other things that I actually added back in with firmware, like the remote camera flash functions. But yeah, for the most part, it's just a simplified menu. 90% of the stuff is still there, plus 4K. You are not 13 minutes behind. It's just that you are so popular. Thanks. I think I'm caught up now. Yeah, Elaine, you can't use any cable. You have to get a special one. It's a USB cable, but it's shaped a little bit differently. I'm sure it's the same on the M10 Mark III. Or whichever camera you have. It's not the same on every Olympus camera. But this is what it looks like. It doesn't look any different. It's just the head on the cable. See how good the autofocus really is, right? It's focusing on my old hands. No chance. I'm gonna have to manually focus. Oh, there it goes. That's right. It looks exactly like a USB cable, but it's not. You have to be very specific. I forget what it's called. But you search for EM5. Well, you search for your camera model and cable, and it'll come up. No, don't go on eBay. Go to Amazon. That's probably a better source. I own the M1 Mark II, and I would like some suggestions for UHS-2 memory cards that really work fast in the camera. Okay, SanDisk, this is the one that I use. So make sure that it has the double row pins, right, like this, versus this one is only single row, right? So that you know this is a UHS-2 card. And the SanDisk Extreme Pros, UHS-3. So you're gonna see the little indications here, right? See the little number 3 in the U shape inside of a U? It has to be U3. And then I think they're faster now. This is a little bit older one. This is a 280 megabits card, but I think they go up to 300 megabits now. So those are the things you want to look for in the SanDisk card: UHS-2, U3, and the megabits rating on the card here. This card has been through the washer and dryer several times, and it still works great. You guys does that ever happen to you? Like you get your loaded clothes out of the dryer and you find like a memory card in the bottom or in the lint trap. But anyhow, this has been a great card for me. And just remember, it only works in slot 1 on the EM1 Mark II, not in slot 2. Yeah, data cable, that's right. It's a data cable for the EM5. Alan's not having any issues with the front wheel on his EM10 Mark II. Yeah, I don't have any issues anymore. When I first got the camera, though, I bumped it a lot. But now I guess my hands have kind of figured it out. Yeah, good luck, Kurt. I wish I could help you more with that. Okay, Ron, excuse me. I just burped into the mic. I'm sorry. Oh, you're teaching a class tonight. That's awesome. So I hit info when looking at the back blank picture. The info shows that the autofocus square is flashing blue. Okay, good night, Barney. Or Barry. I can't read the screen without my glasses, even though I got the fonts pretty large. Barry. I've been calling you Barney all night. I'm sorry. Okay, good night, Barry. Barry. Because it looks like Barney without my glasses on, because everything's blurry. All right. Man, I'm all caught up on the questions. So if I haven't answered a question yet and you asked me, just ask me again, because it's so easy to miss things on this thing. Oh, when is the next conference? Yeah, so Roman's referring to probably the collaboration I did with like Peter Forsgaard, Robin Wong, Maddie Salanto, Jimmy Chang, and in a small way also Emily from Micro Four Nerds. I'm planning to do every third Thursday of the month, and I can only do 3 guests at a time. There's just not enough bandwidth to handle more than 3 Skype calls live. And so it's going to be 3. I definitely have Emily from Micro Four Nerds coming on. I'm about 99% sure there. So I'll know more once we get closer to that timeline. And I think February 20th, I think, is the next one. Thanks, Dave. I'm Superman with Olympus. Yeah, I'm glad to help. Because I use the cameras, right? I get real world knowledge. I use the cameras every day, both professionally and personally. And when I figure something out, I make a video. So, a lot of these drive-by reviews that you see, some of them are excellent. Like I think, what's his name? He's a drive-by reviewer, but he does an excellent job. Gordon Lang, right? He has the camera for a few weeks and does a very, very thorough job. So if you're buying a camera, I think he's a very, very good source for information and detail. But yeah, the day-to-day use, like all of these little things and cameras and features, you have to watch channels of people that own the cameras, like myself and Peter and Robin and Jimmy. We own and use these cameras every day, and these are the kind of channels like mine that will give you the real-world usage of these cameras. So, but thanks, I appreciate that. When's the best use of shooting stills? Oh, Roberta, which camera do you have? If you have the EM10, if you have the EM10 Mark II or the, I have to know what camera you have, and then I can give you a better answer. EM10 Mark II. CAF shooting stills. Okay, really the only time you want to use that is when you're doing sports action. So moving subjects. All right, and even then, it's not that great. But you're going to use continuous autofocus together with your shutter mode. What do they call it? Low speed shutter, high speed shutter. You're going to use it with continuous low shutter. So let me just look at it on my camera. Then I can just show you. And I got to turn off my green screen again. All right, so it's so awkward doing this backwards. Here we go. So you see it's in CAF, and right here, the L with the 3 boxes, continuous low, that's when you use CAF, is when you're in continuous low shutter and CAF. If you're in continuous high shutter, it's only going to work on the first frame. But I wouldn't use CAF for single shots. Like if you're in single mode, taking one picture at a time, don't use CAF on the M10 Mark II. But if you're using continuous low shutter where you want to capture several images, that's the best time to use it. But if you had the M5 Mark III or the M1 Mark II, I would use it all the time. Okay, good, Elaine. That should work fine. You're definitely gonna need it. Is the video autofocus with the M5 Mark III much better than the Pen F? Pen F does not autofocus in CF on me sitting in front. Yeah, okay. The M5 Mark III autofocus is awesome, by far, than any other camera that Olympus makes right now, other than maybe the EM1X. And the Pen F is the worst autofocus of all the cameras I own. The Pen PL8, the EM1 Mark II, it's not like way worse, it's just not as good as any other Olympus camera. And the Pen F is the only camera that uses that sensor and focusing system. It has the same processor and everything else, but whatever they did on the Pen F, for whatever reason, the Pen F has the worst autofocus of all the Olympus cameras, especially continuous autofocus for some reason. And I think it's related to the sensor that they use in it, because it's not used in any other Olympus camera. I have the EM10 Mark II, but just got the Pen F and love it, working my way through it. If you can please do in-depth video on best settings and a full walkthrough. You know, any of the EM10 Mark II walkthroughs pretty much work on the Pen F that I have on my channel. But I have not done any walkthroughs on the creative dial. And that's something I really need to do, because that's really what makes that camera stand apart. So I do have a video on the EM10 Mark II versus the Pen F. Let me see, it's video number 166. So episode number 166. Watch that video, and that'll point out some of the differences between the EM10 Mark II and the Olympus Pen F to get you kind of started with it. But I do need to do a dedicated video on that camera, on some of the other special features, because I've never done one on the creative dial. Okay, I want to clean the sensor on the EM1 Mark II. Is it better to do it while the camera is on so that the sensor is stable or not? The blower didn't help. I've never cleaned my sensors. I need to do that. But yeah, don't have the camera on. Always have the camera off. I've never cleaned the sensors on my Olympus. I have done it on my Nikons. But the sensor doesn't move in those, right? I haven't tried it, but yeah. I haven't done a video though. I wouldn't even. If I clean the sensor, I'll do a video on it, but I haven't done it yet. Bring my dog into the live stream. Oh man. She's a bitch though, literally. She's a girl dog. She's great with me, but yeah, I don't know what she would do on camera. She'd probably be scared to death. Okay, well, I think I'll just wrap it up here. Seems like if nobody has any other questions, we'll just call it a 2 hour and 45-minute video, or however long it's been going. My goodness, these live streams just go on forever. So I'll leave on this note that the EM5 Mark III is coming out, and it's rumored to have the same battery as the EM1 Mark II, which is awesome, because this battery, I go 3 hours no problem in a live stream. And do I ever use scene mode? No, I've never used scene mode. Maybe once. Let me see what it is. I think they've changed what scene mode is though. Yeah, no, I never use scene mode, but I do need to do a video about it to explain what the different things are in the scene mode and how it works and why I don't use it. Because it's not doing anything particularly special. It's just sort of a guide, but you can do much better if you shoot in aperture priority and control the settings yourself rather than rely on scene mode. Okay, Elaine, good luck. Let me know how that goes. I mean, the update process is very easy now. Don't watch the video I have on updating your firmware and stuff because it's old. It doesn't apply anymore. The new process is much easier. And there's very good instructions on the Olympus website that you can follow along with pictures and stuff. They do a good job. Yeah, the pen apps really discontinued, and I think discontinued is too strong a word. They only planned to make one. They never planned to make a second one, so it was a one-off. So they made it, and that was it. It was never planned to be a continuing product, so it wasn't discontinued. They just didn't make a second one. But all right, everyone. So thanks for joining in. I will be back on Sunday at I think I do 9:30 Sundays. That's my regular live stream in addition to the Thursday one. And if you guys are really enjoying these, I appreciate that. But I'm going to also try and make some more videos because I've been kind of falling behind on that too. But I'll do some more tutorials that we talked about. So if you have any suggestions for tutorials that I can do for you, just go to my forum on my website and you can leave comments there because I have a section specifically for YouTube suggestions. Jeremy's asked me, is the EM10 Mark I much worse than the EM10 Mark II? I can get a very good deal on the original, what used to be a second body. Yeah, no, the EM10 is not any worse than the EM10 Mark II. The only main difference between the two cameras is the video capability. And the EM10 Mark II is substantially better in video. But if you don't care about that, get the EM1 Mark I or EM10 Mark I. Image quality and everything else is excellent on that camera as it is on. It's every bit as good as the EM10 Mark II. The autofocus, everything. Okay, thanks, Roberto. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it. We'll see you guys Sunday or next week, Thursday. Thanks again.